You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here today. I'm Kirk Mona, and joining me are Rachel Gimza and Victoria Thompson. We're all naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders, just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We've got Victoria and Kirk with me this week. So exciting.
Hey.
Indeed you do.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Oh, good. I'm just going to get right into it. I get to get us started this week. Now, I don't know about either of you, but many years have I been plagued with a potential hazard. Especially since
Okay.
I am particularly clumsy, which I think both of you can attest to.
Well.
I mean, it's not an exclusive club. Let's put it that way, Rachel.
It isn't, but I did have a job interview once for a naturalist position, and the interview was outside, and because it was during the pandemic, or like it was like fall of 2020, and since it was outside, at the beginning of the interview, I literally fell on my face. It was the beginning of the interview.
Okay, that's pretty bad.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at a track, got a little distracted, and I did get this job. I did land it. I got the job. Apparently, I found out afterward.
You landed the job, but not the landing.
Exactly. I did pop right back up and fully thought, well, that's it. I'm not getting this job. And then I got offered it. But apparently after the fact, they did actually not do the route that they did with me with any other candidates. So learning curve.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't need any help, and it sounds like neither of you need help in testing of gravity and or falling. So
no, I've tested gravity.
Yeah, I've tested it a
exactly.
few times.
Yeah. So this particular...
I mostly actually test where the bedposts are with my toes.
Oh, yeah. Got to make sure
and
they're
then
still
break
there.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
They're still there, I assure you.
Now, this particular hazard has haunted me, as I'm sure it's haunted both of you, because it was very much in all of our childhoods and many different cartoons.
Ooh.
But what do you do
Ooh.
if you walk and you hit a banana peel that is just left lying there on the floor?
Well,
What
lots
do
of things
you
can
do?
happen. Obviously, your feet shoot out from under you, and
Yeah,
you
fall.
hit
you
a
flip
skateboard,
around,
and
hit your head.
then the
Exactly.
Stars
skateboard.
appear and like orbit around your head. Yeah.
A complete disaster. Exactly. So I've been worried about this.
Almost as dangerous as a rake sitting out.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Or an anvil.
Yeah,
being
we got to
lowered
watch out
from
for
an upper
anvils.
story window.
Or
Piano from
Piano,
the second
really.
story.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
oof.
Classic.
Now,
Or just roadrunners in general.
those are cool birds. Anyway, so Mythbusters did actually work through this particular myth, I say in air quotes, but also there were some scientists that set out to find out, will you slip on a banana peel if it is on the floor?
Ig Nobel Prize material right here.
Absolutely is, yeah.
We'll get to that. Okay, so
I figured
this
it would.
was published in 2012. Scientists at the Kyoto University in Japan, they had to know, how slippery are banana peels? This was
Sure.
Yeah.
led by Kyoichi Mashubi, and he and his fellow group colleagues, I quote, sacrificed 12 bananas to test this.
$2 worth of
Still eat
bananas.
them, right?
Right? Well, yeah, apparently, like, he tested this out with more than 12 bananas, but they wrote about these particular 12 bananas, and he started just giving out the bananas to students because he was tired of the bananas, which
So
was
sick.
fair. And
You can only make so much banana bread now.
exactly. So they were testing to see if they could find the friction coefficient. Now, for each banana peel, volunteers stepped on 5 different parts of the banana peel, with the inner part of the banana peel on different samples of linoleum.
Linoleum. Okay.
On
so
linoleum. So, and they measured all of this on a force transducer, which makes me think of Rocky Horror, but it's a real tool. This transducer, this force transducer, allowed them to get the force, the weight, and the pressure that was applied to the banana peel on the different types of linoleum that they had. They repeated this on different flooring types, including hardwood flooring, but also, just to be sure that it wasn't just bananas, they tested apple peels and some other citrus peels. And tangerine peels, I guess.
This is so ridiculous.
It's very ridiculous, and also, you'll never guess, but those are not slippery. So they repeated this, and it turns out there's actually science behind this. So the friction coefficient that they were able to find was 0.066 on a linoleum floor.
Well, what does that mean?
Sounds real low.
Very low. For comparison, the friction coefficient of ice is 0.05.
Oh. Okay, so pretty slippery then.
Pretty slippery. Not as slippery as ice. Definitely not as slippery as Teflon. I guess Teflon is 0.012 is the friction coefficient for that.
Wow.
So Teflon is way worse. But ice is pretty slippery. Banana peel on linoleum is slippery, and then hardwood floor was actually a little bit less slippery. It was 0.086 or something like that.
Sure.
Okay.
But still really slippery. I was not expecting that.
That's what I was wondering too.
I didn't
the banana
see
peel
that
on
they...
the street scenario.
I know. I don't think they tested concrete. They were looking at like slick floors, very smooth floors, because
presumably
it does
it would
matter. If there's any like grout or anything, because they're looking for the friction itself of the forward. I'll get into it. So what? Because I know that there's a question, and I hear it, and I'll get to it. I promise.
Okay.
So when they were able to look, they then took the bananas, they mushed them up a little bit, or the peels themselves, and they looked under the microscope to see why they could be really slippery. And I mean, I probably could have told you this, but when they're crushed, like under the force of a foot going forward, the banana peels actually create a sort of gel-like material, which is most likely the reason why they're so slippery. Right. It's the inner lining of the banana, so that makes sense. Now
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe you're going to get into this.
Yes.
So I sort of, the gel-like thing, I can totally see that. That makes sense from my experience of banana peels.
Right.
I'm wondering if, because the outer skin of the banana is more like a rubbery texture. I'm wondering if like your foot sort of, grips your foot, and then that even like makes it more slippery because your foot is just like clinging to the outside of the banana peel while the
is definitely
gel
part
is
of it.
Slipping against the floor.
A little bit, yeah. That's a great question, and it is definitely part of it, of like the difference between the top part of the banana gripping not gripping, but providing footing for your shoe or your foot versus what's underneath and is in contact with the floor. So this study didn't actually say which type of friction, which is what you both were alluding to earlier. There's 2 different types of friction that you should be concerned with when you're dealing with a banana peel on the floor. So static friction is the friction that is between the object and the ground itself. So the object itself interacting with the ground. There's always some sort of friction that's happening. That's going to have that gel-like material, but there's also dynamic friction, which is the movement of your foot on top of the banana peel, pushing it forward. Okay. Now, in order for it to actually be slippery, the dynamic friction has to be overpowering the static friction in order for slipping to actually happen. And unfortunately, this study didn't really say which type of friction this coefficient was relating to, whether it was the static friction or the dynamic friction. So who knows? But we know that they're slippery. So that's wild.
Okay.
So wild.
All right.
They ended up actually looking into what they were really interested in was when they were finding out this coefficient, they were looking into what it could mean for artificial joints, because it's actually a somewhat similar material or a similar like coefficient to the layer that is found around cartilage in joints. So it could be a good like lubrication to help with artificial joints when you're replacing a knee, for example.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was just fascinating. I stumbled upon it, and it was very validating of my caution of banana peels being on the ground, which, again, who is leaving banana peels on the ground just willy-nilly? Just compost your banana. What are you doing? This particular study...
I mean, not these days.
Right, not these days. This is an old-time issue. But this study actually came out in 2012, so it's a little bit of an older study. It came out in Topology Online, which is an open source. You can read the paper.
Nice.
And like you both guessed, in 2014, they won the coveted prize of the Ig Nobel for physics.
Nice.
Lovely.
For physics.
Lovely,
awesome.
lovely.
It was wild. It was a nice little short thing. It was like, what even is going on? So my sources this week were the paper, which was Frictional Coefficient Under Banana Skin in Tribology Online, Science Direct, Science News, and Reuters. All had great articles about this weird paper that happened in 2012.
Outstanding.
Actually, no, we're slipping.
True, we're not standing, we're slipping.
We're sliding.
We will watch for those banana peels on the sidewalk, though.
Yeah, so that's what I have for you both this week. And for all of you out there, we are going to take a quick break. And when we return, it'll be Victoria.
Hey, we're back. Modern humans have been living in Australia. Rachel, I'm encroaching on your territory again.
You're all good. I will not lay claim to the entire continent of Australia. It's just so fun.
Our Australian listeners appreciate you not laying claim to their entire continent. So good job.
Well, modern humans have been living in Australia for an almost unimaginably long time. Yeah. The latest evidence suggests that the ancestors of today's Aboriginal Australians first arrived at least 50,000 years ago, possibly as long as 65,000 years ago.
Oh, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to contemplate. At that time, glaciers covered much of North America and Europe and the Northern Hemisphere, and so sea levels were considerably lower. So Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea constituted a single landmass, which paleogeologists call Sahul.
Okay.
It was separated by sea from the islands of Southeast Asia. So when people first got to Sahul, they would have found very different animals and plants from what they had known in Asia. I talked a little bit about this in my episode on the Wallace's Line.
Wallace's Line.
Yeah, exactly. So the marsupial dominant wildlife of Australia also extends into New Guinea, and it's very different than the Eurasian wildlife that you get a little further west. So the first Australians would have found, kangaroos and wallabies and wombats and koalas and echidnas and platypuses. However, there is one famous Australian animal that they would not have found, and that is the dingo.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we talking about dingoes?
We're talking about dingoes.
Yay!
Nice.
Dingoes are iconic of Australia. Most people have probably seen a picture of one, but if not, or one in person if you live in Australia or have been there. But they look like a dog. They're medium sized. They have kind of medium short coats. The color can vary from a cream. The sort of most common or famous one is like a ginger color, but they can be also brindle and kind of black and tan, similar to a German Shepherd coloration a little bit. They have large erect triangular ears and kind of slightly bushy tails that they carry down low. I did not know this before researching this episode, there are two distinct populations of dingoes, one in the southeast of the continent and one that's kind of more northwest, but also like most of the rest of Australia. Okay. More about this later. Ooh. And yeah, they have kind of an unusual place in Australian animals. First of all, they're sometimes classified as a wild dog, but they were absolutely living as domesticated animals with Aboriginal peoples at the time of first contact with Europeans. Okay. And they are
so that
and were
twice,
highly
then. With well, sort of, but not, because they're sorry, I'm just thinking about domestication. Like they would have been well before Canis. Never mind. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get there. They are and were highly valued in many Aboriginal cultures and were included in human kinship systems. So they were sort of like part of the family, if you will. The most recent evidence classes them as a distinct breed of domestic dog, but definitely like part of domestic dog, Canis familiaris. But a lot of them live independently, so they're feral, which is the word for like a domestic animal that's gone back to the wild.
Like pigeons.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or wild boars.
Right.
Second, as I sort of alluded to a moment ago, they arrived relatively recently. So they were not there 50,000 years ago. Relatively recently, I mean, relatively recently in the history of human occupation of Australia. So like 5,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's still less than I was thinking. I thought you might say 10,000, 20,000. So okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing we know is they could not, based on our current evidence and understanding, they could not have arrived any later than 12,000 years ago, because that's when rising sea levels cut off Tasmania. And there are no dingo fossils in Tasmania.
Nice little investigation there. Okay.
Yes. So they, because they arrived in Australia early in the history of dog domestication, and they were then largely or completely separated from other dog breeds until the arrival of Europeans, they're considered to be kind of typical of what the earliest types of domesticated dog would have looked and behaved like, which is somewhat different than a lot of the modern dogs that we see that have undergone a huge amount of selective breeding, which it seems dingoes have done less of. As a little side note, I wonder how much of this historical debate about like whether the Dingo was a feral dog or domestic dog or really a wild dog has to do with kind of like the racist and ignorant attitudes toward traditional Aboriginal cultures. Yeah. Because there's this like false colonial narrative that Aboriginal Australians were completely primitive Stone Age people and couldn't possibly have had like real domesticated animals or this or that or the other. Which is not true.
Not in the slightest, right?
So the latest archaeological and genetic evidence shows that dingoes are related to domesticated dogs from Southeast Asia. And they're especially closely related to something called the New Guinea singing dog, which is from New Guinea. It's quite rare, endangered, but it's a very similar species. So there was a fascinating paper in our favorite journal.
Oh boy, yep.
Yeah.
PNAS.
Yes.
Yep, that's the one.
It's a good journal.
Yeah, it is. Published in July of 2024, and they analyzed DNA from pre-contact dingo bones ranging in age from 400 to 2,700 yeyears old. And they discovered that you remember how I said there are like two populations of dingoes that have like different characteristics?
Yeah.
So that divide actually predates colonization. And also they discovered that there's been relatively little, like very little interbreeding with introduced Eurasian dogs that came with the colonizers.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that had been like something that had been thought to be true, and like turns out not
how
to
much
be.
does what we're seeing now actually look like what would have been here?
Yeah.
In the past.
Right.
Yeah, and the southeastern population of dingoes turns out to be very closely related to the New Guinea singing dogs, more so than the other ones. And the best guess is that dingoes were first brought to Australia by seafaring peoples from Southeast Asia, likely from the island of Sulawesi, which is now in Indonesia, who engaged in trade with Aboriginal peoples. But this recent paper also suggests that most likely there were at least 2 waves of dingo introduction. So like the southeast and the northwest populations. And there's a possibility that the singing dogs actually are partly descended from dingoes rather than the other way around, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
They're not sure about that, but like evidence could go either way, it seemed like.
All right.
Yeah, so I there's a lot more I could say about dingoes. I don't have time, but many scientists do believe that the introduction of the dingo led to the extinction of the thylacine in mainland Australia, with the dingo kind of outcompeting and then replacing the thylacine as the apex predator.
I can see that.
That's
I talked
what
about
I was
thylacines.
A little confused. My head was like saying, like, you kept saying that domestication and like saying like Canis lupus familiaris, and I was just like, but aren't they? I was thinking that they were marsupials, not actual placental mammals. That's what
I think a lot of people get confused about that. Yeah.
So
no, they're not.
I'm very much with you. That makes sense that if they replace the thylacine. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So there was a marsupial apex predator, the thylacine, and the dingoes kind of pushed it out on mainland Australia.
Oh.
Tasmanian tiger. If you haven't heard of thylacine, I did an episode about it way back when.
Yeah, you did.
I forget what number it was. Yeah. Unfortunately, dingoes are viewed as a pest by many white Australians, particularly farmers and ranchers. They're often killed because they do sometimes eat sheep and calves. However, as an apex predator, they play a very important role in the ecosystem, controlling the population of herbivores and preventing overgrazing of the landscape. So this includes both native species like kangaroos, but also introduced species like rabbits and feral goats that are a big problem in Australia. So, the status of dingoes in Australia and the politics around hunting and killing them is very, very contentious, somewhat similar to how I would say wolves are viewed in the United States.
Yep.
There's, I didn't really get into like dingo behavior or other cool things about them, because I've already gone on a really long time, so I need to stop there. But they're a very fascinating animal, and I just thought that the history going back into time was really fascinating. So I wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of sources this week. Several papers. The one I mentioned about ancient dingo genetics. That was in PNAS. By Yassine Salimi et al. Suilmi. There was an article in Smithsonian Magazine about dingo DNA. I also got some good information from the Australian Museum and the National Museum of Australia, the University of New South Wales, the California Academy of Sciences about early human migrations, and an article in Science about how the dingo got to Australia from April 2016.
Awesome.
Wow, cool.
Thanks, Victor. This
fun fact.
Oh, go ahead, Kirk.
Well, fun fact, my dog is part dingo.
Oh, is that true?
Banksy?
Wow. It's true, actually, yeah. Banksy is one of my dogs. And possibly even Ada may also be part, because they are clearly both part or wholly, especially Banksy, Australian cattle dog. And Australian cattle dogs have dingoes as one of their constituents that made up the original breed of that dog. So
fascinating.
Cool.
So technically, my dog's ancestors were part dingo at some point there, which is kind of fun.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, it'll be Kirk.
Have you ever thought about what would happen if your airline window popped out? Or if you can build a jetpack using only machine guns? Turns out you can, but you really shouldn't. Hi, I'm Jill Chacha, host of a podcast that's for weird people who like learning about weird stuff. It's called, well, That's Interesting. And it's a comedy sciencey show that tells the story behind the facts, because as it turns out, those stories are funny. Every Thursday, I tell the tale behind a new, odd discovery, like how researchers found two mysterious structures surrounding Earth's core, or how it's actually possible to stop hiccups using a rectal massage. Yes, there's a story behind that, no pun intended, and I tell the story because storytelling is the perfect way to learn and remember. The facts are bizarre, the stories are epic, and the laughter is plentiful, so join the flock and listen to Well, That's Interesting, wherever you do podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome back. One of the topics we have covered on this show, probably a bunch, is parasitism.
Oh yes.
There's just so many parasites out there in nature. Yeah, and they're strange, so they get their fair share of coverage. Mm-hmm. But specifically, one of the things we talked about is parasitoid wasps. Mm-hmm. This was actually one of the first topics I ever covered on the show, back when I covered the golden digger wasps back in episode 5.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah. And to refresh your memory, they sting grasshoppers and then stuff them underground for their young to eat alive while they mature. It's really
so
something.
Cool.
Yeah, go check that episode out if you haven't listened to it yet. We also covered the bonehouse wasp, the crypt keeper wasp. We've talked about wasps a bunch. Talked about the wasp being used to save the Wilkins bunting. Mm-hmm. I think, Rachel, was that one of yours?
I think so. Yeah.
We talked about potter wasps as well. We could probably do a podcast just all about wasps.
Oh yeah.
And never run out of topics, because there are over 100,000 known species of wasps on Earth. Wow. And because I'm a huge nerd, I went ahead and did the math. If we each covered one wasp species per episode, and we do 52 episodes per year, that's 165 wasps per year. We could do 641 years worth of podcast episodes just on the known wasp species. I should point out, though, that it is a moving target. We keep discovering new wasp species all the time. I did find one paper that estimated if we look at just parasitoid wasps, there may be over 1 million different species of parasitoid wasps in the world.
A lot. Didn't we also cover?
I don't know about you. I'm
maybe. The thing is, when we mention wasps, I think people sometimes get like, "Oh my gosh, wasps!" So it's like most wasps are tiny and have nothing to do with humans. You never see them. It's not at all an issue.
Right.
Now
it's so many wasps.
I do want to point out though that number is just the currently living species and does not include the extinct ones. Oh, which is a pretty important point.
Yeah.
Because the animal species I want to chat to you about today is, in fact, an extinct wasp.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay.
So I couldn't find any information in the journal article I was looking at on exactly when these specimens were collected, but I think it was pretty recently. This is a journal article that's brand new. It was published in March of 2025.
Oh, wow.
So brand new research here.
Oh, yeah.
And the species in question has been given the name, here we go, Sirenobethelius charybdis.
Okay.
Oh.
There it is.
Charybdis, like
Crypto.
Like Scylla and Charybdis?
Well, here's the thing.
A rock and hard place?
Yes, very good, very good. So let's talk about that. Perhaps listeners will know the origin of, like Victoria, of Calibris. It's the name of a sea monster, basically, that appears in the Odyssey and also a number of other Greek tales.
She has a sister.
She does, yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the name, but there's this thing where there was
something
could
like
be.
That?
It's like where the boats.
Scylla.
I think
the boats had to sort of navigate between the two. I think it was actually like a channel between two islands. Yeah. And the idea was if you got too close to either, it could be really dangerous.
Charybdis.
Yeah, there you go. the monster seems to be like a personification of a dangerous whirlpool that would suck in and destroy passing boats. And there is, to this day, a whirlpool that forms in that location, although it's not particularly dangerous, maybe to very small craft, not like to any sizable boat of any kind. But it's, part of the tale.
Maybe it was back then.
So that alone, yeah, maybe something changed, right? Maybe some geology changed. That alone should give you some clues about this new, or I guess, to be more technically correct, very old wasp species. Okay. That's the generic or genus name. By the way, that's where the word generic comes from. Is from genus, like the generic name for something is the genus name for it. Huh. Fun little side tidbit there. But the generic name or the genus name is also a clue about what makes this wasp special. So the genus again was Sirenobethelus, and the Bethelus part is just a reference to Bethilidae wasps, which is it's a member of that.
Does it sing? You said siren. That's like siren.
Yeah, now it doesn't actually, we don't know if it actually sings because this was found in amber. But Sireno is kind of a clever double reference, both to the Greek sirens, which were, but also to to sea cows.
Oh, yeah.
To the manatee. And you're like, wait, I probably should explain that. So sirens were said to be female supernatural beings that sang beautiful songs that lured sailors to their deaths. They're often conflated with mermaids. And I guess that's how sea cows and manatees ended up in the order Sirenia. Because I guess people thought they looked like mermaids.
Okay.
Look, these sailors have been at sea for a real long time.
For mermaids, yeah. We talked about it when I talked about manatees forever ago.
I think we did, yeah. So interestingly, there's sort of that connection to the sirens, but this species of wasp also has a very interesting lower abdomen that is shaped a bit like the tail of a manatee or a sea cow. So the authors pointed out that they're like, look how clever we were. And they pointed out sort of this double meaning of the species name, which is very cool. So we're going to put it all together here. We have a name that hints at sirens luring prey to their death by a monstrous trap. And that's a pretty good description of this wasp. So what makes this wasp so special is that while it is a parasitoid wasp, similar to those alive today, it uses a now extinct method of catching prey that researchers had never seen before, and does no longer exist. So the description of this species was based on 16 individuals found encased in ancient amber in current day Myanmar, which got to be a tough place to be doing research.
Yep.
But the specimens date back to the mid-Cretaceous period, so about 99 million years ago. And the researchers not only took photos, they did micro CT scans to create these amazing 3D renders of the insects they could turn around and manipulate in the computer. You can see these in the paper. They're super, super cool. And what they discovered, because they could view these with such great detail, was pretty shocking. The wasps had a series of folds on the underside of their abdomen that were filled with tiny hairs. And the best and most apt description, if you want to picture this, is to picture a Venus flytrap.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a fitting description of not only the look of the abdomen, but they believe also a good description of its function as well.
Wow.
It's so cool. I know, right? For the first time ever, we seem to have evidence of a wasp that is an ambush predator that somehow lures smaller prey literally into their abdomen and then closes around them and traps them and can then use their ovipositor to essentially sting them while it's trapped and probably, inject them with their eggs and whatnot and then maybe set them on their way. That is absolutely
that's insane.
Bizarre.
Wow.
And I'll say, I think once again, we just need to pause for a moment and appreciate the fact that that either we are too large for wasps to prey upon, or better yet, they are too small to prey upon us. This is straight up terrifying nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
This feels like something out of like a Tolkien story where our heroes are suddenly swallowed up into the abdomen of a giant parasitoid wasp that instantly closes down around them and turns them into zombies for their offspring to feed on. It's just awful.
D&D monster ready to go.
Yeah, D&D monster. There you go. So it's also amazing, though, I think. We often marvel at how over time evolution has tried so many different approaches to find what works. Mm-hmm. And the world we see today is a result of millions and millions of years of trial and error. And clearly there was a time when this strategy was the hot new thing. And it probably lasted for millions of years before dying out. And just, a different strategy maybe just was more effective and won out. And I got to say, I, for one, am glad that evolution let this adaptation die out.
Mm-hmm.
I am especially appreciative that there are structural issues that prevent human-sized wasps from ever existing. You can't.
Yep.
You just really can't have insects larger than they currently are today. They've reached the limits of how big they can be, at least with the current level of oxygen in our atmosphere. Their body systems don't work at a larger scale, which I'm very okay with.
Fine with me.
Yeah, we talked about that a long time ago too.
Yeah, these are pretty small wasps, and their prey was smaller than them. So this is small stuff, but just super, super cool.
Oh, I love science.
The good news is you don't need to worry about giant Venus flytrap wasps. It is cool to know that once upon a time, long, long ago, such an amazing horror really did lurk in the forests of the Middle Cretaceous. I almost said of like Middle Earth. The Middle Cretaceous, right?
Maybe Middle Earth. We don't know.
So, right, it seems like the kind of place they would be. My sources this week were the journal articles Parasitoid Wasps in the 2024 journal Current Cell by Burke and Sharonowski. And the main source, though, was the paper A Cretaceous Flytrap? Remarkable abdominal modification in a fossil wasp by Wu et al. That was in the open access journal, BMC Biology.
Nice.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's what I got this week. And I guess that just about wraps up the show. What a journey we went on.
We've been on a wild ride this week.
Yeah, it's
all over the place.
All over the place. Well, there's going to be more fun next week. Thanks, everybody. We'll have a good night.
Yeah. See y'all next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach us by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can check out our website, strangebynaturepodcast.com, and you can support the show and get ad-free episodes at patreon.com/strangebynature. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.